Have you ever heard of an outlaw who was also a church deacon? A man who would quote scripture one minute and pull a trigger the next. It sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood movie. But this was the real, twisted life of James Brown Miller, one of the most feared hired guns of the American Old West. They called him Deacon Miller because he didn't drink, didn't smoke, and was a regular churchgoer. But behind that pious facade was a stone-cold killer, a man who allegedly racked up a body count that would make other outlaws look like choir boys. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the shocking saga of Deacon Miller, the man who lived a terrifying double life. Born in Arkansas in 1861, Miller's dark path started early. When he was just 8 years old, his parents died, and he was sent to live with his grandparents. But tragedy struck again. A year later, they were found murdered in their home. Young James was a suspect, but nothing could be proven. He then moved in with his sister and her husband, but this arrangement didn't last long either. At 17, Miller got into a heated argument with his brother-in-law and ended it by shooting him dead. He was arrested, convicted of murder, and sentenced to life in prison. But this is where Miller's knack for escaping justice first appeared. On a legal technicality, his conviction was overturned, and he walked free. This was just the beginning of a long career of violence where the law always seemed to be one step behind. After his first brush with the law, Miller drifted into Texas, taking up work as a cowboy on the Miller Graves Ranch. Here, he earned his infamous nickname, Deacon Miller, for his surprisingly devout public behavior. He was a regular at the local Methodist church, taught Sunday school, and was known for his polite and gentle demeanor. He never swore, drank, or gambled. To the townsfolk, he was a model citizen. But beneath the surface, the deacon was sharpening his skills as a killer. He was deadly accurate with a pistol and a rifle, but his weapon of choice was a shotgun, often concealed under his long black coat. He wasn't just a gunman, he was a businessman. His business was murder for hire, and he was quickly building a reputation as the man to call when you wanted someone gone, no questions asked. One of his first known contracts was against a man named Joe Townsend in Pecos, Texas. Miller ambushed Townsend, blasting him with a shotgun. Townsend survived long enough to identify Miller as his attacker, leading to Miller's arrest. But once again, the deacon's luck held. He hired a top-notch lawyer and somehow was acquitted. It seemed that no matter how much evidence was stacked against him, Miller could talk, pay, or intimidate his way out of trouble. This acquittal only emboldened him. He realized that with his pious reputation as a cover, he could operate with near impunity. He began taking on more and more contracts, becoming one of the most prolific assassins of his time. His price was reportedly between $150 and $2,000 per job, a fortune back then. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and the flock had no idea. Miller's most infamous association was with the legendary lawman Pat Garrett, the man who killed Billy the Kid. After Garrett's fame had faded, he found himself in a bitter land dispute with a man named Wayne Brazel. Garrett was trying to lease his ranch land, but Brazel was grazing goats on it, which Garrett despised. Tensions escalated, and soon after, Pat Garrett was found dead on a lonely desert road, shot in the back of the head. The prime suspect? James Deacon Miller. It was widely believed that powerful cattle ranchers, who also had problems with Garrett, had hired Miller to get rid of him. Brazel initially confessed to the crime, claiming self-defense, but his story was flimsy. Most historians believe he was just a patsy, taking the fall for a contract killing orchestrated by Miller. Despite overwhelming suspicion, Miller was never even charged. Once again, the deacon had gotten away with murder, this time, the murder of one of the West's most famous figures. But the deacon's luck couldn't last forever. His final act took place in Ada, Oklahoma in 1909. He was hired for $1,700 to assassinate a former deputy U.S. Marshal named A.M. Gus Bobbitt. Bobbitt was a stubborn man who had powerful enemies, and they turned to Miller to solve their problem. Miller carried out the hit with his usual brutal efficiency, ambushing Bobbitt and shooting him down. But this time he made a mistake. He talked too much. The men who hired him were quickly caught, and they confessed everything, implicating Miller as the triggerman. Miller was arrested along with his employers and thrown in the Ada jail. The people of Ada were different. They were tired of killers escaping the law. They weren't going to wait for another slick lawyer or a legal loophole to set a murderer free. On the night of April 19, 1909, a mob of around 40 determined citizens stormed the jail. They overpowered the jailer, took the keys, and dragged Miller and the 3 other prisoners out of their cells. There were no trials, no appeals, just swift frontier justice. The mob marched them to an abandoned livery stable. The other men begged for their lives, but according to eyewitnesses, Deacon Miller remained eerily calm. He looked his executioners in the eye and made 2 final requests. He asked for his diamond ring to be given to his wife, and that he not be shot up, but hanged. Then, in a final, chilling display of his dark persona, he declared, "Let her rip," and stepped off the box himself, launching himself into eternity. The image of the lynching was turned into a popular postcard, a grim souvenir of the day the people decided they had had enough. James's Deacon Miller's story is a chilling reminder of the dualities that can exist within a single person. He was a church-going family man on the surface, but a ruthless, calculating killer underneath. He exploited the trust people placed in him, using religion as a mask for his bloody trade. He cheated justice time and time again, but in the end, he couldn't escape the wrath of a community that refused to let another murder go unpunished. His life was a dark and violent chapter in the history of the Old West, a testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest monsters are the ones who hide in plain sight. What do you think? Was the mob's justice justified, or was it just another form of murder? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. The story of the American West is filled with complex characters like Miller, and we're just scratching the surface. If you found this dive into the dark side of history fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the wild and woolly past. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.